Mr. President, I want to rise today. There are a number of issues at stake with respect to the small business legislation that is pending before the Senate, although pending in a way that I would have preferred otherwise, given the fact that I think that this is the foremost issue facing the country today, and that is, of course, jobs and the status of our economy. As we all know, the economy is not creating the jobs that American people deserve, and that's why I joined, across the aisle in extending the unemployment benefits because we have a very high unemployment rate of 9.5%, with 8 million people have lost their jobs, more than 15 million are either unemployed or underemployed, and we have not seen the kind of economic growth that will produce the jobs that American people deserve and to create the kind of security that they deserve as well. So from that standpoint, I thought it was important to extend those unemployment benefits. I also think it's important to do everything we can for small businesses. That, as the chair of the Small Business Committee, Senator Landrieu, indicated, are the job generators in our America. And frankly, I would have hoped that we could have considered this legislation long before now. It's certainly long overdue. I mean, we're in July, and I've been urging from the outset of this year in January that we should address this most profound issue when it comes to creating jobs. Then we clearly have to be concerned about the well-being of small businesses. So the legislation before the Senate has a number of good provisions that I think will go a long ways in creating incentives and helping and buttressing this key component of America's economy. I regret, however, that we're in a position where we have not been able to reach an agreement on allowing the minority to offer amendments, which to me is confounding and perplexing as well as disappointing. After all, I know the majority rules, but certainly the tradition of the Senate should accommodate minority rights as well. And that should mean, on the foremost issue facing this country today, and that is, of course, our economy and jobs, that would allow the minority to offer a few amendments. That's all we're asking for, is a few amendments. I mean, after all, this issue has been languishing for the last 6 months. It should have taken the highest priority on the agenda back in January, as I indicated, as I've been urging, because it's that important to the American people, and I think that's reflected in the historic low approval ratings of Congress, because we're not addressing the key issues facing America today, and that's how we're going to turn this economy around and create jobs for the American people. It isn't whether or not, a bank is good, and that's why we should loan this money. Obviously, there are excellent community banks. They did a great job. They didn't contribute to the problem all across America. It's really a question as to whether or not this is good policy. I mean, that's the bottom line here. Is this good policy? It raises a number of questions. It raises this perspective that we're really recreating the TAP program in another manner. It's just directed to different institutions. And I just think that, Mr. President, we have to be very careful and cautious and prudent at this time. Is there another way to extend the lending capacity of the federal government? Yes, there is. It is through the small business lending programs, which I indicated earlier, and that the majority leader has included some of the provisions that I and the chair recommended, which is to increase the guarantee rates, that has demonstrated their effectiveness. They have demonstrated their workability. They work. They have increased and fueled, lending across this country by, more than 90%, and in my state alone, 236%. Has demonstrated its capacity to working. So why not use those models that we have adopted in the past and that have proven their effectiveness? I mean, I think that's what it's all about. How much can we do? Well, we know we're limited in terms of what we have and as far as deficits and the national debt is concerned. So we have to be, I think, very prudent about how we extend taxpayers' dollars. And I have a great deal of concern in terms of, one, not only extending the $30 billion, but the cost to the taxpayers if you use an accurate and realistic measurement, similar to what CBO had indicated and similar to what was used to TARP. Secondly, how that legislation works, because it creates a perverse incentive. It increases the interest rates to those banks who don't increase their small business lending, but decreases it for those who do. So you do encourage the prospects of moral hazard and the likelihood that, poor, risky loans might be made because of the fact that their interest rates will be reduced as a result. So I think we have to be circumspect about that. I would hope that we would not accept this lending facility, Mr. President, because I do believe that it does raise serious and significant concerns, and that it is a duplicate of the TARP program. And I think we need to be moving in a different direction in this country, and because there are a number of issues that have been raised that cannot be addressed. And I would hope that we could rather build upon the underlying amendment and the substitute amendment to be offered by the majority leader, allow for some amendments on both sides of the political aisle, so that we can strengthen the legislation that is before us with respect to providing incentives in tax breaks, tax relief to small businesses that rightfully deserve those initiatives, so that we can incent them to create jobs and to feel certain about their futures as well as this country. So with that, Mr. President, I yield the floor.
I will respond to the comments made by my ranking member. She and I have worked so closely together, and we just have a difference of opinion about this one particular piece of this bill, which is an important piece, so I will respond to her comments in a minute. But I do agree with one thing that she said, that there could be other amendments that were offered to maybe make this bill better. But I want to ask her, since this is the amendment pending, if my ranking member, I would ask through the chair, this amendment is pending. We're going to vote on this amendment. This amendment could potentially get 60 votes plus. If this amendment is voted on by the will of this Senate, even though she has reservations about it, which she has beautifully outlined, as she always does, but if this amendment is on the bill, and let's say other amendments are offered and some pass and some fail, is she inclined to vote for the bill? And this is the only question I'm going to ask her. And if I have to restate it, I said to my senator, who we work very well together, we have a different view about this particular program, but this is an amendment. I agree with her that amendments should be offered on this bill. I'm hoping our leadership can work that out. If this amendment is agreed to by 60 plus, we may get 70 votes for this amendment. We don't know. We're picking up support for it, although some people are opposed. We're getting a good amount of support for it. Does she believe that she could then vote for the bill?
Senator from Maine.
Mr. President, first of all, I hope that we could offer other amendments as well in addition to this. I think that that is critically important, first and foremost. Like you've had the opportunity to offer an amendment, I would hope that on our side of the aisle that they would have the ability and the prerogative to offer amendments as well. And then we look at the end of the day. And obviously, I know you feel, the senator from Louisiana feels very strongly about this amendment. Obviously, I have some deep concerns, and I certainly hope to support this legislation without this amendment. But if it's the will of the Senate, then obviously I will continue to support that, and hopefully we can move forward. But I would not. You know, I just think that it is critically important with respect to this particular initiative that a number of these issues have to be addressed. I mean, I think in the final analysis, when we're talking about $30 billion, we can't do that lightly, and it certainly, there are a number of issues that have been raised, the ones that I raised here today, that clearly would have to be resolved, in my estimation. So I think from that standpoint, I would have considerable concerns, you know, if it were left, you know, the United States Senate in that, you know, in that manner, because it raises the cost, I think, to the taxpayers, indisputably. Secondly, as to whether, you know, or not, it's going to create risky behavior on the part of banks that are assuming this legislation. And if it does add cost to the taxpayers, then obviously we have to think about that very carefully, because as you know, that it does raise $1.1 billion, at least according to your projection. But if you use a true realistic analysis, as we did with the TARP program, it would cost the taxpayers $6.2 billion.
Well, I thank the Senator for those comments, and she's left a window of opportunity open here for hopefully some compromise as we move through the amendments on this bill, and I yield the floor back to the Senator from Rhode Island.